Welcome to the School District 71 Board of Education meeting. I'm Susan Barr, I'm the chair, and we will just get started. We'll call the meeting to order. Have a motion to adopt the minutes of December 17th.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then next item on the agenda is a report on an in-camera meeting held from 6 to 7 this evening. There was no business of an in-camera nature for the board, so we didn't actually have a meeting. However, just wish to rise and report on an issue that, as people probably know, we routinely deal with personnel matters in camera. And due to increased public accountability with respect to the pay and so forth for people in the public service, we have made available our superintendent and secretary treasurer's contracts. They're at our front desk for viewing if anyone is interested in seeing those. And just for the record, they are renewed as of October 28th when the board renewed those. And we look forward to serving our communities with Secretary Treasurer Ibbs and Superintendent Tinney for some good years ahead. So that's just for your information. Okay, so we have no presentations this evening. First item of business will be old business then. It's an update with respect to Lake Trail School. Danny, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, they had the regular PAC meeting, and there was about 22 parents attended the meeting, as well as 5 of the trustees and Superintendent Tinney. And the primary topic of discussion that night was whether or not to extend to grade 11 next year because of the board motion that had taken place. And quite honestly, from the crowd that was there was not a massive outpouring that said we want grade 11s there next year. They seem to be somewhat content with the 8 to 10 structure for the following year. So at this point I would say there's probably no great reason to rescind our motion or reconsider the motion that we have gone forward with.
Thanks. Do you have something to add?
Yes, I was also at the meeting, and what I heard clearly from the Lake Trail community is that whatever decision the board makes long-term, they have been bounced back and forth over the last 3 years. Of one month they were going to be a K-8, the next month they were going to be a secondary school. And the concern we heard from the parents on that is that they would like to have some long-term continuity, and I agree with that. The other concern I heard from the parents and the community were regarding the structure and the facilities itself and communication, and they had some concerns about that. And what I was thinking the board may want to do at some future point in a consultation with the parent group is develop some sort of committee or some sort of process where we can sit down and discuss with the Lake Trail community long-term plans and goals. We've heard concerns regarding the facilities and their side of the river compared to the other side. When we talk about spaces, we talk about the paint and other structures, and there's a lot of concerns brought up over that. And I think that as a board, I'd like to hear that, and maybe we have a develop a committee or a working group with that community, finding out what they want, listen to them, and have a conversation and have a dialogue. So I would like to the board consider that, making it a once every 3 months or 4 month meeting with the community and finding out the school community what to hear from them. We've heard those concerns, and I would like to see us having a dialogue with that community and moving forward and helping to address some of the concerns they have.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Just that I'd like to say that 5 trustees were able to make it to that meeting to hear what the parents had to say, and there's a couple staff members there, and the other 2 trustees that couldn't make it actually were at other PAC meetings that evening. So I think that was really good that we had an opportunity to hear what they had to say. Okay, can we move on with the next item then? Cape Lazo auctions. So I just have some comments to make before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this. Just a bit of context that in the past few months we've heard in person and by letter and through, I believe, the municipal election on November 15th, that there are many things in the district that people have sort of been dissatisfied with. They were dissatisfied with us moving away from middle schools. They told us they didn't like us dismantling school cultures. They were dissatisfied with the amount of portables we've got and the overcrowding at some schools like Valley View and Highland and Cumberland L. We have tonight on our agenda a letter from someone recommending that we bring band back for grade 7 students, and others have made similar comments. We've heard that there's some dissatisfaction with splitting up teaching teams and social issues such as mixing grade 8 students with grade 12s. So I think that the people of the Comox Valley have sort of entrusted the 7 of us to help find solutions to these challenges, and we've already started to do that. We've looked at Lake Trail, and we're going to have some options coming to us soon with respect to Cumberland Elementary. But one of the first issues that we wanted to address was the splitting of the population at Cape Lazo and Brooklyn. They are going to be split for 3 years due to the decisions made by the past board, and that is regrettable, I think. But I think our board is committed to working with that community to find some short-term solutions to consider to make it sort of better for them while they're waiting to be reunited. And so what the board did was we decided to, at our liaison meeting that we have with our superintendent yesterday, we thought we might talk about a process that we might undergo in which to consider what we should do for that school community. And as we began to sort of talk about, there may be some short-term options, we kind of wondered if it would make sense to consider short-term options, but also long-term options in the context of maybe a wider plan for the district to sort of address some of these other issues that I've mentioned. So where we got to was we thought it might make sense to do that, to consider a district plan, and that we should actually have a fuller discussion about that right here tonight at our board meeting. So hopefully I've captured sort of what we talked about at our liaison meeting, and I throw it open to trustees to weigh in. Anybody want to start? Fran?
The dilemma for me as a trustee in Comox is, do we, on one hand, consider the big picture first and fit in a plan for Brooklyn Lazo afterwards, or do we, on the other hand, do we deal with the immediate concerns first with respect to Brooklyn Lazo, which might mean the use of the buildings in a temporary way in the short term, just possibly 2009, 2010, and sort out the big picture afterwards. So, and I think that's a real dilemma in terms of figuring out where do we start in terms of from general to specific or specific to general. So my inclination, because of my concern about the time that looking at the big picture may take, would be to deal with the Brooklyn Lazo difficulties first.
Anyone else? Tom?
So I'm equally on sort of public record saying where my alliances or interests lie in terms of middle schools versus non-middle schools. Having said that, we've been through a fairly rigorous process in this community, and it's certainly not my intent to be part of a process or to lead a process that will result in an acute whiplash effect for everybody in this district. So I'm not interested in sort of a flip-flop for the sake of flip-flopping. I am interested in having a sober second look at many of the issues that Susan referenced, but also in the context that we need to appreciate, and I appreciate, that there are likely many families and certainly some educators who are probably quite content with how things ended up because they've moved from physical environments that perhaps weren't to their individual standards, either as parents or kids or as educators, and now moved into sites that are more so. So I need to appreciate that the changes have resulted in, I think the board needs to appreciate the result, the changes have resulted in some folks, from their perspective, likely feeling that things have improved. An underlying theme for all of this, and it's the dirty subject around money. We need to be acutely aware of the money, and we can't pretend that it doesn't. And if we do pretend that it doesnn't, then Mr. Higgs will remind us that it does matter. So all of what we would take on has a price tag, and that will need to be weighed against the various other price tags and demands that are on the school district. So I guess the key point, and then I'll stop rambling, the key point for me is that the public needs to have some comfort. Let me rephrase that. I hope the public takes comfort in the notion that this isn't an effort, and it won't be an effort on this board to have the district go through a whiplash effect. I think in the discussions on Monday night, the reference was used around sort of a compassionate process, recognizing that folks have different interests and different stakes, depending on where they are in the system, as partner groups, employees, as parents in this case.
Okay. Lori?
I agree with Tom.
I'm sorry, I just made a mistake. Sorry, I'm going out of order. Janice and Lori. Lori.
I'm going to echo to what Tom alluded to, I believe, that regarding the whiplash effect and proceeding cautiously. The one thing that I would like to comment on is the emotional turmoil and the financial turmoil this district went through the last little while. And whatever decisions we make, we must realize that as part of the process. I also am concerned that in dealing with the LASA issue, that we can't go with one zone, because I believe whatever decision we make in one zone has a ripple effect throughout the entire district. So I'm just concerned that when you look at the picture, you must look at the bigger picture, because what decision you make at one school or one zone will have a ripple effect, because we are a community. You know, we represent the entire valley. So this Lake Trail has a ripple effect at Vanier and vice versa. So I would just be really concerned myself as proceeding cautiously and realizing the emotional effect this last year has had on everybody. And I'm talking about families, I'm talking about parents, students, and our support staff and the community. And that would be my concern as we look at them as a picture moving forward.
Thanks, Janice. Lori Smith?
I'm just going to reiterate what Janice said. There is an emotional price tag here as well as monetary. We've got support staff and teachers and principals, that are very stressed out about what's happened last year, and we need to be very compassionate to whatever avenue we're taking. I honestly believe we need to be specific about the whole district instead of just one area of the district, because it will have a domino effect to every other school within our community.
Karine?
Well, I agree with Fran that Brooklyn school population does seem to be the area that has been the most affected, as their population is currently divided into two sites. I agree with everybody else that you can't just work in this district in isolation, because everything that you do to one school has an effect that reaches out and touches everybody else in the district. And so we need to look at the district as a whole. We need to look at it as a bigger picture. And while we need to be cautious, I think we also need to do this in a timely fashion in order to give the parents of Brooklyn, for example, answers as quickly as we can while doing our homework.
Do you want to talk again?
Thank you. I was trying to keep track of who I agree with and who I disagree with. Sort of lost track there. So I agree with some of you. The point that I was trying to make is, while I fully understand that we need to take a wide-angle lens view of the district, there are probably, we probably can at the outskirts of that wide-angle lens be a little softer in terms of our analysis at this point in time. I think where we need to sharpen our focus is on the LASA Brooklyn issue. Being mindful of the trickle-down impacts for all other parts of the district. I mean, we owe that, and it's been stated, we owe that to the kids and the parents and the staff and those two sites, as well as we have a responsibility to the Francophone School District. We engaged with them and as a board, as this enterprise, not necessarily us, but as this enterprise, in good faith, and they engaged with us in good faith, and I think that, I believe that they have a responsibility to report back to them and bring things to some of those. So focus on the Lazlo Brooklyn and look at some options there in the short term, with a mind that, to a wide angle lens view of the district.
I could almost agree with you. I guess it's no surprise that I was not in favor of the single transition. I see some problems starting to arise with bullying in schools that although some of them were there before, I keep hearing that they're getting worse because of the large distance between the students. One of my primary concerns right now is to get every one of those portables off our school sites and out of this district. We went through a lot of years with a lot of portables here, and I hate to see us going back to starting to use them again. But having said that, I have to agree with you. It's that anything we do has to be compassionate, has to be well planned this time, and over a longer period of time if there's to be changes.
Well, maybe I'll just throw my few cents with, and I haven't talked yet. You've talked twice. You can go after me. So I think that, yeah, whatever we do, we need to think about it, and we need to ask the public, what do they think about it? Because, I think we're a pretty good board, but I think that the public has elected us because they want us to ask them about any sort of changes we make. So I think that if we go to make some changes in the district, we have to put it out there for the public to give us some feedback. So maybe I'll be a little bit bold here. I think I said some stuff before the election, and I kind of stand by that now. Like Danny, I was never really a fan of the single transition model, but we've got it now. We've bought and paid for it, and there's a lot of warts to it, as I mentioned earlier, and I would like to see us get more information about how we can fix those problems in the context of our K-7 single transition model. I think that also, in my mind, there are sufficient people out there that are not happy with the fact that we have a single transition, and I do hear very often we should just put it back to a middle school model. So I think that we should take a look at, can we fix these issues in a fiscally responsible and compassionate way in a middle school model going forward. And I don't know if that's just how I see it. Tom?
So my comment is very specific to the brief phrase that Danny included, and that was around the planning, around the last one. And from having talked to you, I know that it's not a planning like these guys did a really bad job planning. It's planning in terms of the corporate board, in terms of their process. So it was not, the comment wasn't meant and shouldn't be heard as a reflection of planning that folks did, particularly administration, at the request and direction of the board.
No, it was definitely laid at the board's feet.
Clearly. I did that. So I think what I'm hearing is that we want to look further. We're not sort of happy with how things are to leave Lazlo Brooklyn for the way it is for 2 or 3 years, that we need to find some way to make it better. And I think I'm hearing that we need to talk about a district plan or options that we would consider. Do I have that right? Do you think anyone disagree with that? Okay. Fran?
Not quite disagree, but not quite agree.
Okay.
I don't know that I would say that you have to look at a district picture in order to develop short-term solutions. But having said that, I do think that a big picture view does make sense. My concern is more related to the timing than the concept or the process, because I'm concerned about what one Brooklyn parent said. She didn't want to wait until summer to know which building her child was going to be in. So that's why my inclination has been towards a temporary solution and maybe in parallel a larger solution. So I don't disagree with the larger, I just don't want it to, a temporary Brooklyn solution to be dependent on that, because I'm afraid it would take too long.
Does anyone take issue with that? Do you want to make a motion with respect to that?
I'm not sure where to start on
So I'll start with the motion. So motion that the board asks or directs management to come up with, and we'll need to work on the wording, come up with options that speak to short-term and long-term solutions for the Lazo Brooklyn area, and I would think as part of the process, use their discretion to see how wide an angle lens needs to be applied. I'll need to work on the language. Sorry, Deb.
Can I just clarify, is your intent to make a motion just really with respect to Cape Lazo?
No, but that's the starting off point. So I'd like to have one discrete for Cape Lazo.
Okay, so I just asked Debbie, read back what do
Okay.
you think you heard there?
That the board direct management to come up with options that speak short-term and long-term for solutions to Brooklyn and Cape Lazo. That's as far as I got.
Does that meet with your approval?
Close.
Okay, does anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, second. So, would you like to open discussion, Tom?
No, I think it's pretty well in the motion, and I said in advance of making the motion.
Danny?
I just want to ensure that it's
Yeah.
clear.
I'd just like to know how things are going at Brooklyn, because I have to think back to probably one of the neatest little schools we ever had in this district was Black Creek, which was a K-3. And Tom, you were here when we closed it. So, are things going well at Brooklyn, or is a major issue having the kids split because some from one family, some from another, or is it both from same family having to go to two different schools?
Well, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
You're the trustee liaison, and maybe Green has something to say as well. Go ahead.
as Tom was saying before, some things are good for some families and some things are not so good. The issue isn't just the fact that kids are split between schools, that there are younger kids at one school and older kids at another school, but also the school, in order to work on its school as one entity, as a culture, there's a lot of toing and froing where kids are walking from one building to the other building. So that's another part of being split that that may not be obvious to everyone. And there are issues at the Lazo site in terms of space as well. And I haven't looked at the numbers in terms of what happens next year, if that's going to be the same, bigger, or a lesser problem. But that's another issue. So the parents, the general feeling from discussion is that parents want Brooklyn united. It's not as simple as united, because I asked united at any cost, and it's no, because there's controversy as to whether portables are acceptable or not. So there are a lot of issues, but it really is a priority because Comox has been so hard hit by the changes.
Okay, thanks. Green, do you have anything to add with respect to that community?
I will, because I am a Brooklyn parent. And Danny, I understand what you're saying about Black Creek being a beautiful little school, but we're actually one school and 2 sites, and that would be the difference. And as Fran has pointed out, it is a problem for us. In order for our community to be a community, we actually have to make time in a school day to get the kids together, and it's not an easy thing to do because, as you can imagine, you have to supervise children walking between sites. Christmas concert was a prime example of that. In order for the whole school to be involved, we had to have our QP members who were kind enough to dismantle it. It was a huge set. Take it from Lazo's site, rebuild it at Brooklyn so that the kids could get together at Brooklyn in order to practice the play. They dismantled that again, set it back up at Lazo so that the kids could have their final practice there and do their concert there. And so kudos to QP for doing that. It was a huge undertaking. If you could have seen the size of that set, I don't know how they did it. And so, yeah, that's a problem for us. And just the logistics of saying, okay, we're going to have a Christmas concert, now where are we going to practice? That sort of thing is an issue for parents. There is an issue, too, with older siblings who are supposed to walk younger siblings home, and, you know, they dismiss at different times, they enter at different times, so you have young children that are being dropped off early so the older sibling can get to school on time. And that, you know, for me as a parent, that would be a concern, and vice versa when they get dismissed and have to go down and pick up the younger sibling. So it is a concern, and it is true. Brooklyn wants them reunited, but without portables. So while we need to look at that, I don't think we can do it in isolation, but we do need to do it in a timely fashion.
Okay, you got me convinced.
Okay, so that's the feedback you were looking for? That was feedback
Yep.
you were looking for? Okay,
That's
Janice
what-
and Lori.
Okay, I'm glad you guys brought the information to me because that does make me want to support the motion more. But I'm also cautious because I don't think that Lazo is a single entity. I think whatever we do in Lazo has a ripple effect through the district. We're talking money, we're talking dollars, we're talking a long-term plan. So I think in contents of this, I'm looking at maybe another motion and looking at district-wide. So I'm concerned. I hear strongly from the Lake Trail community is what about us? And I think we need to take down contact also. So I will support the motion. You guys have sort of brought that in, but I'm also thinking the district-wide. I think we need to look at a district motion, looking at a district-wide plan also. So.
Janice, put your thinking hat on, because maybe you'll make another motion
I'll think about it.
on this one. Lori?
While I don't support portables, I know that the community has stated that they don't want portables. Are they adamant about that? I'm just looking at the numbers for next year, and if we move Strong Start out of Brooklyn, that means we'd only have 1 portable on site.
So I just would caution you to sort of get down to sort of that level of detail. What we would probably do is instruct our superintendent of some parameters. You know, like maybe we would be okay with moving Strong Start out, or maybe please prepare a scenario for us that shows a portable there, and then they could bring us that if this motion passes.
I'm just thinking, like, it sounds like they're very adamant about not having portables, but if it meant that the community can be brought together as one school again, are they willing to do that? And I guess that's a question to you because you're their liaison.
So I just want to caution, again, that when you go to a PAC meeting, there's however many people there, 15 people or whatever, there's not 300 families there. So do you have a perspective on this?
I was just going to say the same thing, that the next step would be to get a true sense of what the Brooklyn community wants. We would have to liaise with the Brooklyn community and the PAC to get a wider representation and for them to figure out the best way to get us that information. Because what I have, again, is the flavor and the sense of what they want, but we would need to go further in order to get their opinion.
Anybody else have comments? Okay, so before we go down this road, we'll look over there to the people that we're going to be tasking to write this report and set of recommendations and ask for your input, please.
Thanks, and we're just curious from the conversation last night and from what I hear today, there's both this need to look locally at Comox zone, yet consider district-wide implications.
There could be another motion.
Yeah, and so if there is, one of the things we'd asked for was real clarity around what do we do. What I had heard in the past, and some of the conversation tonight, was including a middle school model for the district, and whether that's 6 to 8 or 7 to 9, and that would include schools like Cumberland, Lake Trail, Quinish, some talk about a two high school model where, Isfeld might become 6 to 8 middle school or 7 to 9 middle school, or Aspen go back to middle school, the kids go back to Comox. So what we're looking for is that type of clarity because of the timeline piece. What exactly does that work look like for us to do for the board? And what are those parameters so that we give you exactly what you want? Because the last thing we would want is to miss the boat to develop this series of models for you, whether that's A, B, or C, and then for people to say, oh no, but wait, we wanted, as a simple example, we want put Strong Starts into the mix. Maybe they don't need to be where they are, or Aboriginal Head Starts, or life skills programs, or things like that. So that's the type of clarity we're looking for and hoping for tonight in terms of to do that work for you, along with a timeline of when that would come back to the public in a process for consultation.
Anyone have some thoughts?
Well, the motion that I was going to bring forward, we haven't voted on this one here, so I don't know if I'm speaking out of order. We have to vote on this or not. But the motion that I was thinking of, and the wording is something that I'm not quite on, is that maybe something that management should look at, bridge the board, is what you're talking about, is looking at either the state status quo, single transition, as 6, 7, 8 middle school, or 7, 8, 9 middle school, or that. So along that line, as part of the board would like a report on that and what time frame we're looking at, and some continuity on that. So I could be out of order on that, but that's what I was thinking of bringing forward that motion, that we ask you for that report. That way we canvass the Lazo issue, and then we've looked at the entire district, and that's where I think we need to look at in two separate but sort of together, because what one does affects the rest of the district. That's just my thoughts on that.
I wanted to throw one other grade structure in there. It was an 8 to 10 with the 2 single high schools, senior high schools.
Okay, so that may be for the next motion.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about this motion and just thinking that I'm wondering about if there would be some, because I think we're sort of stuck with how things are because of the lease for Cape Lazo with this situation for the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm wondering if this motion could maybe address what we might do over the next 2 to 3 years to make it better there. And the next motion could deal with something else, potentially longer term. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Glenn?
If I could, a little lack of clarity for me on understanding that part, because I thought the motion was a little more general than that, like beyond it. It said short term and long term, not just curious. Is it your desire to amend that down to just be a short term?
Just, yeah,
long term?
yeah, thanks. I don't know, what do you guys think? Fran?
That makes sense to me, to separate the motions now into the first one, because we have sort of 2 on the table.
Yeah.
The first one being looking at dealing with Brooklyn Lazo in the short term, and then the second motion being the more, I guess, simultaneous, having a big picture look at things, as Janice has said, with those 4 options between what Janice and Danny said. But having said that, I'm not sure what I would be wanting in terms of the short-term Lazo options, because it's such a preliminary discussion, so I wouldn't even be sure of what to ask for.
Tom?
So I think that this is it may end up being a series of motions, but they're obviously connected, and you can't compartmentalize them because they connect. So I like the first option, or the first motion, not just because it's mine. It does speak to the immediacy that has been raised here at the table with respect to Lazo and to Brooklyn. But as George said, we have the responsibility to provide as clear direction for these folks as possible, and we're not going to finish the wordsmithing until everybody feels that they have it clear. So a second motion, and I'm just speaking out loud, so I won't start writing anything down. Really is.
I throw you out of order.
It really is. We need the long hand of status quo. We need the long hand of a middle school model, and we can talk about middle school in various arrangements, various grade groupings, and the implications that come from that. So I kind of see it as though it's status quo versus a middle school model, or if the board has other thoughts around keeping single transition with adjustments.
So dealing with the motion that's on the floor right now, do you see any sense in carving the long-term piece off of there? I'd like to poll, or Danny says
I'd
yes.
say yes.
Janice? Yes?
Carving it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with amending the motion.
Okay. Okay. So, this is so not Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, we've got things done.
The
Amend
Robert's
the
Rules of
motion.
Order people are not outside, though. So, except for their Flynn is giving me the evil eye.
Well, actually, I know that.
Yeah.
We need someone to amend the motion. Can you
Amend the motion to include short-term only.
Second that.
Okay, so could you read what the amended motion would be, please, Debbie?
The amended motion would be that the board of direct management come up with options that keep to the short-term solution for Brooklyn and Cape Plateau.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment?
Amendment.
Okay, we have to do this way. Any discussions on deleting that piece? Okay, we'll vote on deleting that piece to amend the motion. All those in favor of the
Amendment.
raise your hand. Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now Debbie's just read the motion. Anyone want to comment on that motion? No? Okay.
I have a question on the
yeah,
motion.
When you say short-term, we are talking 3 years and under.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Now we're getting the evil eye from George.
I was asking, what is short-term?
You need more information from us before we proceed on this one? Nope.
Is it not technically 2 years?
2 or 3 years. Okay. Fran? Right.
Even though it's less than 3 years with an emphasis on 1 year.
Yeah.
ASAP.
Please. Thank you.
But we're not going to amend the motion.
Yeah.
No. Okay, any further comments? All those in favor of the motion?
As amended.
As amended, sorry, thank you. Opposed, carried. Okay, so that's short-term Cape Lazarus. Janice, do you have anything?
I would like to make a motion, and maybe Danny can help me with the wording on this one here, because I'm not good at the wording, to be honest with you. Direct management to look at the following options: a single transition, a middle school, whether we do 6, 7, 8, or 7, 8, 9. Secondary school, either we have 2, we have 3. Bring those options to the board for discussion, and I'll leave it to you guys with the time frame and looking at long term. So please help me with what else you guys might want to add to that. So
Well, I'd ask the question, how soon it can be done?
tomorrow?
Glenn?
In response to that, I have a lot of questions we have to
I'm
answer.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we put a motion maybe on,
That's
let's
my
get a
motion.
motion.
My motion is to direct management to look at the single transition, status quo, middle school, whether we do 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9. Secondary school, you have 9 to 10, 10 to 12, or 2 secondary schools. So that's how to generalize it, and I know it's a long motion, but you guys can shorten it down, you guys can amend it, so
Okay, maybe if I could just clarify, when you say secondary school, what do you mean?
we have 3 right now. We have Vanier, Marquardt, Isfield, and we have Highland. When my son was here in 98, we had 2 high schools. We had Vanier and we had Highland, and we had Marquardt, Isfield was actually Courtney Junior, and the numbers worked very well. We were declining enrollment. There might be option of going from 3 secondaries to 2 secondaries as part of our declining enrollment. That's what I meant by 2. It's just looking at that whole long-term, because we're talking long-term feasibility. So that was my thoughts.
Clarify, 7 and 9 model may result in 2 secondary schools, or an 8 to 10.
Now that you've got the logistics about what you want, a simple motion would be to review the grade structures as they currently are and as proposed as middle schools.
Okay, what do you think of that motion?
Does that help, Lynn?
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it to get the discussion.
Okay, so Debbie, could you read back what we're...
Just ask for clarification, so
I can
that
remember.
the board direct management to review the grade structure as they currently are
And as a middle school and senior structure.
Okay, you did a better words than I did.
I'm just making sure.
Okay, so moved by Danny, seconded by Tom. Some discussion, would you like to open discussion, Mr. White? Or sorry, Trustee White?
Well, it's her motion, but we want to do the review. We want to do it at some point, at least look at the options that we have, what it's going to do, what it's going to cost us, and have the consultation with the public over what the long-term fee education here in the valley. So, I mean, it's very simple. You're going to need this thing to start with.
Lori?
I guess if there's no viable options, there's no reason why we need to consult with the public, right? It's just, these are options that we're looking at to see if we can do it in a fiscally responsible way. And if not, it's dead in the water, right? It's my question.
If I could, it's really germane to what Lori has said. Would we, to make this viable, you'd almost have to look at closing other schools, right, like some elementaries? Would you be willing to sort of contemplate that?
Then it would be upon you guys to bring forward a proposal that says that this is what it would take to do it.
I guess that's part of the option. That's part of the option.
If I may, I think that's a piece of it, the clarity I think we're looking for, and how far do we go? Like, some guiding principles might be, please go about presenting, let's just pick one option, the two high school option for the valley, the middle school model, with no portables. And that does consider moving of strong starts and closure of elementary schools. Okay, we can do that. And then cost it on and do that. But I think that's, I think that's the type of clarity we're looking for. And then I'm hearing two pieces, which is there is a timeline to develop and bring forward a report like that, along with models. And then there's a new timeline after that, which is what does consultation look like? Because the report will land and it will have, sounds like, at least 4, possibly 5 options and the costing in general. And then the board would need to consider, okay, there it is, and then what do we do about public consultation past that point? And to answer Danny's question of how fast can we get that report ready? The suggestion was that we could get that ready for the end of February board meeting for conversation. And at that point, the board could make a decision about where to from there. But it's pretty hard for us to get anything ready prior to that. And we also want to be really cautious about just reaching into the backpack and pulling out last year's models, or the last 2 or 3 or 4 years models, because they're all there. This is new work. It's a new district in terms of things are in different places. But at least that sort of broad brushstroke by the board in terms of meet these criteria, meet these criteria and provide us with this by that timeline, and then we can go from there. That makes sense.
Anybody else have any comments? Tom?
So the consultation pieces will be very much driven by what we see. I mean, this exercise, as painful as it appears to be, for those sitting and for those over there, is really to allow us to close a loop that has been open since before November. And we need to, in a very responsible and accountable way, demonstrate to not only ourselves but also to the public that we've taken a look at what our options are and then move forward. I could see it going one of 3 ways. We receive the options, and it's abundantly clear to the board that we are where we are. We receive the same scenario, and we open up to the public and say, give us your feedback on this, because we may think we are where we are, but the public will say, well, we're prepared to lose on this and win on that. Or it may become clear that there are other options, one, two, or perhaps more, that are different than the status quo that require a much more longhand process.
I guess for me, I think this whole question is kind of like the elephant in the living room, and we really have to get to addressing it. I think that the public has raised some concerns, as I mentioned earlier, and there are a number of ways to resolve those issues. We can look at resolving those issues in the context of what we got now, and we can take a look at resolving those issues in the context of looking at other options. And I am really in favor of having other options prepared for us to consider. I think of back to the Trillium report, and I think that there is a middle school model there that they proposed that actually has the same schools closed as we have right now, that preserves a middle school model. So I wonder if, options can come forward like that and without closing any more schools. So that's sort of one thing I'm thinking about, and I think it does have to be in a compassionate way. I don't think that we can take a look at anything that's going to cause a lot of duress for people. I'm just not in for that at all. Not something that, oh my God, we got to ram this through and it's got to be ready for September of 2009. Not a chance. I'm not up for that at all. It's got to be nicer than that. And we have to be able to afford it. And I think the only way we're going to know the answers to these things, to that elephant sitting in the living room, is to look at it, talk about it, and if we think that we might want to make a change, then we do. We ask the public and we make a decision fast, I think by the end of April, and we just move forward. Because moving forward is what we got to be doing here for the benefit of everybody. So I'm prepared to support this motion. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say? I'll just check with trustees first. Any other trustees have something to say? Okay.
Just another question we have about the comment about September 2009. There were questions about Cumberland and Cumberland L, for example. Where do those fit in the scheme of if there is another report at the end of February, but you want to consider options for Cumberland L by September 2009? Are you foregoing those options for September, or is that still perhaps make an adjustment there and then consider what after that?
That's still on the table, and actually there's a little amendment to what we had talked about for the Cumberland report coming forward. Take as presented on.
Oh,
okay. Any discussion on the motion that Debbie just read back to us then? No, we're on the amended motion. Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that concludes committee reports. We need a motion to receive the committee report.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now down to new business, professional partnerships. Dan.
Okay, Madam Chair. This is actually a significant budget item, and I'd like to place a motion to refer the professional partnerships as presented here to the Finance Committee for discussion and evaluation prior to any budget meetings this year.
I second that.
Any discussion?
My only comment is thank you for preparing it, and my curiosity was for what it was, and so this provides me with a good context for the budget itself and how it breaks in. That is from you, Mr. Douglas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
So more specific questions about this would
Yeah.
be better served to the finance?
Yes. So it's considering the fact we've got a declining population and budgets are getting tight, I think we need to review any significant items like this.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so that will go to the Finance Committee. So correspondence item, Stephen Hansen, Executive Director of the School Trustees Association, strengthening the Connections School Community Connections Funding Program. what would you like to do with this item?
Good question. Glenn, have you been doing anything on it?
Actually, Madam Chair, Lake Trail was actually brought forward an idea, and I encouraged them to put a proposal to us, and then I was going to say this with the city as well, and then on if Lake Trail. Yeah, that's the only one. The only good that has contact.
Anyone else, Jen?
Are schools in the community aware of this? It's been very well documented this grant was available, that maybe that we could somehow let people know that this money is available and they have the opportunity to apply for it. Maybe let people know that it's there. I mean, it's money. We might as well apply for it if we possibly can.
If board would like, no problem. I didn't circulate the school. It was well circulated previously, but the extension probably has not.
Okay.
Was that the time that they said, here, we'd like your proposals, but the deadline was yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was last week.
Different one, okay. Okay, so just basically board information then on that item. Everyone's okay with that? So we'll move on to the Climate Action Charter. Page 46. Yeah.
A couple of questions, and Madam Chair, maybe Nancy Group. On here, it said boards of education could receive a grant to offset what they will be approved at. To be eligible, boards must be defined as climate action. So how much money are we talking about? Like, is there a dollar figure, or is there anything, or like?
Your Madam Chair, no. We have no idea at this time.
I guess for me, this item raised some questions with regards to, I guess, coming down the pike at us is the government is mandating everyone to be carbon neutral. So that's what this raised for me and what that means to our district. And I think in the future we'll have an item on the agenda with respect to that to get the district staff's perspective with regards to how we're doing and what we should be doing and so forth on that. Jeff and then Danny.
I'd also like to make, this actually ties into when I was in Vancouver, I went to the Fraser Institute regarding a really good dialogue, and what they talked about was climate change and the effect at schools. And we had a really good presentation with students in schools and all that. And one of the things that I learned, and was wondering if our district has it here, is in reading the charter, they talked about creating a committee to talk about that. Other school districts have it. They meet 3 times a year, and they bring back motions, and they bring back cost-effective. And I looked at the Richmond School District, because they were the ones that were talked on, and they have an incredible policy regarding climate control and sustainability. It's very well gone through the district. And I'm wondering what the flavor, I know we've got a lot of work on there, but I would like to put a motion that our board consider creating a committee. It's regarding the sustainability, climate change, and environmentally responsible, and I think it's called Sustainability and Environmental Committee and Action Team, which I think would be really positive. The school districts that have done it have actually saved money. They talked about one district, they did all that, and it was $1 million in saving over 2 years because they found all the things in the district that they could save money, and also developing a policy towards that. So it's a twofold motion. So I would like to bring that motion to the board that we consider that. I think it's beneficial. Our government is telling us they want to become carbon neutral, and I think that we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
So are you making a motion now, or would that be good to get that?
That our board consider a committee for sustainability and climate change.
It's a Sustainability and Environment Committee or Action Team. Wherever you want to frame it, just talk about climate change and the impact we'll have in the district. So the wording is subject to you guys working on that. And also developing a policy with regards to that.
Does anyone like to second that?
I'll second for debate.
Before we go there,
Second for debate?
wouldn't it go to the committee, the policy advisory committee?
I'm just going to ask Janice, do you see this as an ad hoc committee of the board, or are you
bringing
feeling
it to
it
the
should be
board.
the district that convenes this committee, or?
I'm bringing it to the conversation and dialogue. It's the committee, I think, that our district can to do, and how the board wants to proceed forward for conversation and discussion. So I'm open to.
I'd like to think about amending the motion to tag on that it be brought to the policy advisory committee. Given the representation that is at that table, there's sort of called for inclusion in
I can
whatever you
find
move
minutes.
forward. So,
Secondary exception.
What's that? I didn't hear you, Danny.
The amendment.
The amendment?
Considers it a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment? I think we're going to go with friendly amendments. I like that process. Everybody's okay with the friendly amendment? Jordan?
I was just going to say it might be helpful to know what we're already doing for these strike committees, because there is a bunch of work that Chuck is doing, including we're having a public forum. So if we understand, as we do through your conversation, the board's questions and the thoughts you have, we can prepare that for example, the January 27th looking down aisle here at Chuck meeting, just as a briefing note for you around this is what we're doing, and you could bring something forward at that time, because we've got a forum, I believe, held in the board meeting and we're webcasting, and so there are a bunch of things. And so I'm just saying it might be a little premature to strike the committee, because we may already have a structure of which the board is unaware, or you could just ask Chuck.
So
Okay, what we could do is we could postpone this until the 27th, until after we've had an opportunity to hear what's going on with regard to this work now. And then we're not having a policy advisory committee between now and the 27th anyways. So on the 27th, if we wish to move forward with this,
I will
then
withdraw my motion.
we could postpone.
Postpone my motion to the 27th.
Make a motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone. Thank you.
Somebody like to second that?
Second.
Not debatable, right?
Sorry.
Okay, you got one right. Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so that would be great, and if we could have some information on the 27th.
So we're going back to the discussions.
It's helpful for us at these points, because we don't want to drop things at the board table, but maybe have some components directing Chuck Morris to bring forward a report for the January 27th board meeting. And that ties up the loop, because it goes on our action list, and we can bring it forward to the 27th, and it carries through to the agenda.
You prefer to get that by board motion?
Yeah, I
Rather
do.
than-
I know
okay.
it sounds a little tricky. but
No,
just
that's
give it
okay.
the-
No, if that works for you, that's fine. Somebody want to bring forward a motion?
I make a motion that management bring forward to their climate action plan, with it, however you want to do it, to our next board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Well, I have a few questions that I'd like to have addressed through that process. With regards to this charter, on page 49 of our agenda, they talk about measuring and reporting on greenhouse gas emissions and so forth. So something I wonder is, what are we measuring and how are we doing it? And I'm just wondering, has the government actually come up with a formula yet as to how these things should be measured? Has there been any discussion with regards to offsets? Are they going to fund us for offsets in the future? How much money is this going to cost us, and those sorts of things?
I think that would probably be more appropriate for the discussion this time on the 27th.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Chuck probably does have some answers now, but I think...
And I don't want answers now, I'm just saying that maybe perhaps through his report, I'd like to know that kind of stuff. So now with respect, Dan,
Are we still dealing with this?
with this
thing?
charter,
Okay,
we have
okay.
this charter before us.
So I can make some comments on it, like the carbon tax being a policy for sending a price signal, but there's environmental and economic costs. I think probably the carbon tax is more detrimental to people out in the rural communities than it is the ones in the lower mainland, where they have at least a half-decent transit system. One of the questions I had was around the measuring, reporting, and again, greenhouse gases. What are the costs? How much time is this going to take for us to start doing the measurement to become carbon neutral? A large portion of our board's building emissions or from our buildings? Well, I'm not sure that we have that many with fossil fuels currently going into them, are they? I think the majority of them are either electric or natural gas.
Glenn?
That would be the natural gas part, because the electric part, I think, is still fairly green in this province because it comes from rainwater. And one of the other questions is how do the grants work when we start to do these retrofits? Is it going to be a percentage, or have they given any indication on them? Yeah. And then I sit and look at the greenhouse gases, and in the Lower Mainland, they have air care for all the vehicles. And if this government was really concerned about that, they wouldn't have moved away from, I believe it used to be 5 years, a vehicle 5 years old, less than 5 years old, didn't have to be air cared, so what they did is they moved, I think it was to 7 years. Seems counterproductive, and it's only in that area of the province, so that one I might get unpopular with. That's a few of the questions.
Janice?
One of the concerns I did have when I read this was the cost factor. When I read statements like implementing programs and policies that facilitate reducing GHG emissions where appropriate, to me it sounds like there's a cost factor. And before we approve anything, I need to know, is this going to cost us any money? And I think that in light of the report we've asked come back in January, I'm wondering if we can maybe not vote on this tonight and maybe have that discussion and dialogue and get some information, because I see a cost factor to this, and I hate to support something without knowing the final cost. That's just my thought on that.
So before, Lori, you're next, but I just want to clarify something. My understanding of this document here is that something that the government says we have to adopt if we want to get some kind of a rebate check. I got that right?
Potentially, yes. I mean, this is really just to give feedback to your organization, right? I thought the motion was only about creating a report.
We're on to the next discussion on to what we want to do with regards to signing on to this charter, I think. We didn't vote on it? No. Thank you. Danny,
No, I thought it was part of the same discussion.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I meant it for it to be part of the same discussion. Okay, before we go on with this discussion, maybe we better vote on the motion. Sorry. It's been a long day in healthcare today. What's the motion that we have on the table, Debbie?
That management brings a climate action plan back to the January 27th.
Okay.
No question.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Lori, on the charter.
I'm just saying, if this is ministry mandate, this is something that's going to cost boards of education money to implement it. We need to ensure that our ministry is going to help offset that cost and give us proper funding to get those programs up and going. So are we willing to lobby the ministry on this issue?
Absolutely. Whether or not it'll work could be another thing. You're still a novice here. Susan's got a nice list for you.
You've got a list that I actually have it right in here. I personally would be willing to lobby. I think I'd like to hear what Chuck has to say about where we're sitting at right now first, so I'll get some more information.
I agree. I'm not sure what I would be lobbying for or against at this point. I'd like and I don't want to start off from a presumption that I'm going to need to lobby. Expect a nice good news story. Everything is offset, including
So do we want to send any feedback at this time yet to the BCSDA with respect to this charter? Or do we want to wait?
I'd like to wait till we get a report and have that dialogue.
Okay.
We've got time.
Okay. Good. Can we move on to the next item then? Kathy Wolf has written us a letter to request that we consider reinstating Band 7. And like some board discussion with respect to her letter. anyone have anything? Lori?
Well, just seeing how our initial conversation started out with Kate Lazo options, and I think maybe we should hold off at looking at this because, in essence, it could become part of the long-term picture within the district. It's something, unfortunately, we couldn't implement a program this year, even if we wanted to, because it would be too disruptive for the schools. Consultation focus, so we have to go in with not per se band teachers, but the music teachers within our elementary schools.
Fran and then Tom?
I don't know that short-term, again, the short-term and the long-term solutions are necessarily mutually exclusive. And I think maybe it is possible to get more information from someone about implementing something, maybe, well, obviously not the traditional grade 7 band program this year. I'm just not sure who we would ask for that information.
It would seem to me that we would probably approach our fine arts coordinator, Charlotte Harvey. Charlotte Harvey would be the one probably to give us that information. Tom?
So I think this is a very reasonable request to come to the board to consider, and I'm wondering about at least formally identifying it as an issue that we will address through our budget planning process and make a motion that we do so.
Second.
Making a motion
Second.
that we incorporate the Band 7 issue in our budget managing process.
Okay, so that's the motion. I think it was
Second.
Danny who seconded it. Any discussion on that?
Green? One of the things you need to take into consideration, if we remain status quo, i.e. we don't go back to the middle school model, you have to remember that some of these music teachers currently teaching in the elementary schools are not band teachers and may not be comfortable teaching a band program. So we would have to look into getting specifically band teachers, and we couldn't rely on a music teacher necessarily to be able to teach band 7. The other thing that you need to consider is that I think band 7 used to be a 3-hour program in a week, and now currently the grade 7s are getting 1 hour of music instruction. So there's a whole lot of implications if we remain status quo with implementing that. Finding more time, prep time for the teachers, teacher itself. So it's a huge issue. It's not really a small issue that we need to be aware of when we consider this.
Just for new board members' information, last year the music teachers did put forward a proposal. There were two aspects to it. One was it was going to cost some money, and the other one was a cost-controlled sort of way of doing it, not exactly using prep time, if I understand correctly, and using some band teachers at high schools to go and teach at elementary school. So they did have a proposal they put forward last year. The board last year did choose not to consider adding it back into the budget. So there is sort of a basis out there for them to give us a new report if we would ask them for it, I think. Jess and then Danny?
I totally believe in the music program, and I'm wondering the presentation and having Charlotte come to me, the education committee meeting, and do a presentation over what the music program is and how it encompasses it, because Band 7 can mean different venues for different schools depending on the type of that. And we're talking about instruments, and if anybody knows, my son played the Barry sax, and I know how much the Barry sax costs, and trumpets and saxophones. It's not just that we're talking, it is not just defining the teacher's time, we're also looking at providing instruments. And I think we need to have a more full venue of what that's going to cost, to be honest with you. And I think maybe I support it. I believe go the process. I'd like to have a presentation maybe from the music teachers and the music department, and maybe education committee meeting, showing us what the music program is, what the band program is. And there's many people whose kids have never gone through the band program. My kids went through it. They loved it. They thrived it. And I think it's a really great program. But I know what the program is, and maybe other people don't. So I want to consider that as part of one of our presentations.
Just a comment with respect to that. If we refer this to the budget process, what would happen is perhaps we would lobby Charlotte to make sure the band teachers or the music department prepared a comprehensive budget submission for us, but we get a lot of budget submissions, and, you know, from my perspective, it might almost look like we're playing favorites to have them do a presentation to us. So just a
So I
comment with respect to
understand
that.
that, but I would also like to know what it would look like. I just don't want to say we can give $100,000 to the grade 7 band program. I would like to know what that program would look like, and whatever venue you want to present it, fairness around. I think that we need to know the context of whatever we're looking at and how it would look and how we present it through the district. Because, you're correct, we have music teachers now teaching in high school, the elementary one is time trained, and also space issues. I mean, there's elementary schools that cannot accommodate a band room. If you've been into a band room, and you've got 20 kids with trumpets, 75 kids with playing different instruments, it's loud, and you need to have space for it. So
So
that's
we
my
got a
concern.
pretty comprehensive package from them last year, but, you know, if
I
the
wasn't
board...
there, so I didn't see it. So.
No, I know. If the board's interested in having them come and present to us at some point, I would suggest that we probably all communicate with Tom, as he is going to be the chair of the education committee. And if that's sort of the majority of people would like to do that, we could. Fran?
Wondering about why education committee as a venue as opposed to a board meeting where the public could hear as well.
Time limitations.
We have a 5-minute time limit for presentations to the board at board meetings. So it allows for a bigger presentation at education committee. Danny, sorry,
Well, I believe we spent a significant amount of money on instruments last year, did we not? $150,000 something purchased for the district, but I was just going to tell the trustees that maybe just take a walk down this hallway out here and look at the pictures on the wall, which is our secondary bands, and I'd hate to see them disappear the way they have in the Lower Mainland.
Any other comments? Well, my comments are that I really support bands for grade 7 students, and I hope that we find a way to bring that back. It's a big deal to me, music. I think our family has benefited by it, and in the past, half the kids have taken band 7. It's a really good opportunity for kids that are not sort of sports-oriented to do a team thing. I think it's really beneficial. So I think we will refer, or the motion is then to refer this to the budget process, and perhaps we could approach Charlotte Harvey and ask her if they might provide us with some information to support an request through the budget process. Okay, so Debbie, what's the motion that you have for you then?
That band 7 be incorporated as part of the budget planning process.
Okay, everyone is okay with that?
Do we need the second part to direct someone to give us that information? Or
If
just
you
ask?
feel we should, or we could just ask. What's your feelings, Mr. Douglas?
Through you, Madam Chair, I look after fine arts, certainly for the elementary schools, which is under the work I do. And Charlotte and I get together.
Yes.
So I can certainly talk to Charlotte. I know that there is some talk about this secondary band teachers wanting to present to the board about band 7, report for band 7. And I could speak to Charlotte about getting something prepared for you folks. And she could certainly come forward. Education committee, I'm hearing, not really.
Not sure about that yet. I think we're going to have to communicate with Tom as to whether it's going to go there or just go straight to the budget process.
But if that's your request of me, I can certainly make sure that we do that.
Okay. Is everybody okay with sort of informally doing it that way while we vote on the motion? Okay, so all in favor of referring this to the budget process? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Last item on the list, Janice, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Chair. This letter that the school district number 27 wrote regarding child poverty, and kind of struck a chord with me is, as I remember, a news editor's release on May 5th, 2008, with Stats Canada about BC's child poverty rates were being the worst in Canada for this consecutive year. And on the list, it really kind of shocked me on Courtney's numbers. That Courtney, child poverty rate before income taxes, this is Stats Canada, 22.6% of students in Courtney live below the poverty rates. After taxes, 16.1%. That's a staggering amount of students in Courtenay that live in that poverty level. And it has a direct impact at our school level. Student achievement, behaviorals, kids coming to school hungry, and it really has impact on our district. Now, what this district did is they wrote a letter supporting the BCTF's brief on education funding that the provincial government eliminate child poverty in BC. And I don't know whether our board wants to do that direction or not. We are lobbying for money, looking at a bigger picture, and maybe come down the road and doing another letter, adding other items. But I just wanted other trustees to know that number. I didn't know that until I read that. I didn't realize that other than Victoria and Esquimalt, we are the third highest on the island for children living in poverty. And that was really shocking. Comox Valley, we're higher than Port Alberni and Campbell River, and other than Esquimalt and Victoria, everyone else is lower than us. Children coming to school has an impact on their education. Hungry, behavioral, and that. So the board, if they want to write a letter or want to wait until some people that are lobbying the ministry for funding, I know that Lori was talking about lobbying for money. So what do we want to lobby them for? And do we lobby them for everything or nickel and dime? And we have to really set our priorities. But I'll make other trustees aware of that number. I was really surprised. And I know that it has a financial impact on our district, and especially in the dry lunch program and other issues and student support and other issues. So that was something I want to bring to the attention of the rest of the board. And are we wanting to write a letter, or we want to maybe wait and draft a really good letter, really hitting the ministry for funding for many things or single areas? Tom?
I think we'll be writing lots of letters over the next number of years, so I don't think we need to be overly cautious about writing. I think there's value in us, whether in the end it ends up being purely symbolic or not, to follow the School District 27's lead and to send a similar letter. The numbers are astounding for this area, but even if they were half that, they'd still be too many. Many governments, locally, provincially, nationally, internationally, have come out against child poverty, but we have a long ways to go to deal with that. I think it would be somewhat remiss of us just to sort of receive this and go, isn't that nice, and let somebody else carry the can for that. I think we should. So I would make a motion that a letter be written similar to School District 27 to the government on the poverty issue.
So I second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Corinne, did you have anything to add?
No, I think it's probably a good idea and I agree with Tom. We will be writing, I see quite a few letters in the future, and this is an important issue, and one that I think we need to get behind. Those numbers are atrocious.
Corinne?
I know I'll be supporting this motion. Just looking at Hornby's issues, meeting a family back at the beginning of November when I was campaigning, they were still living in a tent. This was a family that had 2 children that were ages 7 and 9, and to live in those type of conditions is just appalling. And Hornby's unique, but their whole overall, like you look at their household income, it's almost $25,000 less average of what the normal family makes. There's a lot of struggling parents out there, and the kids do suffer.
Are you wanting to add something, Lynn?
Point of clarification, who was Troy Collette?
Well, that's, I think, whoever makes the motion or seconds it would probably be the one to write the letter and go through. That's the way it should work.
You don't have to.
You can wrestle on it. I will also support this, but a related issue is that we have a local resource person called Joanne Schroeder, who works with the Clyde Hertzman people over at UBC to talk about issues with respect to school readiness. And there's studies being done, and I think it would be a great benefit for our board to learn more about that. as a measure of how ready kids are to come into school, poverty being one of them. And perhaps we could get Joanne to come to an education committee meeting if she's in town sometime to talk a little bit about that. These suggestions. Brad?
And just hearing the numbers, I think it's really necessary for us to go further than write a letter of support and somehow figure out a way to explore the issue locally and practically. Taking it, the theoretical does make sense on a symbolic level, having heard what you said, Tom, but also the reality, what are we going to do? So I don't know, process committees, if it's just something to think about to maybe bring forward the next board meeting or the one after that.
Yeah, could do that. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Did you have something you wanted to add or say? Okay, so that's the conclusion of our board meeting. Are there any questions or inquiries from the public? Shannon?
Yes, I wanted to know, when was the agenda setting meeting held to set the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Last Tuesday at 3:30, was it? Yes.
Nice. So I have a follow-up question based on that. So there was an agenda item which the board dealt with tonight, dated Thursday, January 8th. You have just stated that the agenda setting meeting was Tuesday, January 6th. The item is a letter from Kathy Wolf regarding the issue of M7. Leaving aside the merits of the issue itself, my concern with this item is that it appreciate public perception of food disparities. I have a hard time understanding how it was that an agenda item came forward when it was received 2 full days after the agenda setting meeting had been held. A number of the trustees have publicly expressed their support, either financial or otherwise, for the aims of the Comox Valley Citizens for Better Education. This support was stated by some of you either during or prior to the election campaign. The president of that society is the author of this letter, which the board has now given direction on. I have 2 questions. Are you not concerned that the clear perception will be given to the community that those who have significant influence and power, the trustees, are seemingly given a preferential process in which to bring their views forward? And 2, keeping in mind the basic concept of procedural fairness, why does the board have different rules for different people?
Thank you very much for asking that question, because it does allow me to clarify what happened there. First and foremost, the society does not influence the direction that this board goes in. We will listen to the public equally. Secondly, there were difficulties with the first letter that Kathy Wolf submitted to us. There were 2 discrete items that we felt we could not deal with in one board meeting. So we asked her if she would amend her letter to remove one of the items that she had to bring forward to the board so that we could deal with just the Band 7 item, and she agreed to do that, and so that's how that board or that letter got on our agenda. It was received, the initial letter, well before that. So we are not going to be giving someone preferential treatment. Our board meeting, agenda setting meetings will be on the Tuesday before the board meeting, so a week in advance. I would say if somebody wants to get something on the agenda, please have it into us 2 Mondays before the board meeting to make sure that it gets to the right people so that we can consider it at our agenda setting. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Anyone else? Tommy in the back? And then John.
Just a quick question about the superintendent's contract renewed in October. I know that this is a new board, but in the past with previous superintendents, boards have always had performance reviews for the staff and parents to be able to give input, and I didn't see anything like that this time around, so I was wondering if it didn't happen, and do you have any idea what?
Yep, I do. What happened was the past board decided to undertake a new process to review the superintendent's performance. And so they engaged the help of the British Columbia School Trustees Association to help design that process. We went through that process, and there was a review done in conjunction with Dr. Tinney. Dr. Tinney, of course, is responsible for Mr. Ibbs, so they also engaged in a review that the board was aware of. And found everything to be fine, and so their contracts were renewed.
So, I'm just wondering if there's some sort of rule, like is there rules for this? So next time you guys go to renew a contract, you go with what was just done in October? Is that how it's going to work, or?
There's laws govern contracts. Contracts can be varied by both parties. We could mutually agree to change their contracts right now if we wanted to.
No, I don't think you're understanding me. Like before the public and the staff and people involved did things, and there must have been guidelines. So there was a change this time around. So is it in your rules as a board how you renew a contract? And like it was going one way and then it's gone another way. So is there rules that you follow?
I don't know that we actually have a policy on the books that said this is how we have to review performance or anything. Is there? Are you aware of any?
There is none.
Okay. Janice?
Question, you touched on the Cumberland L situation very briefly last meeting, and I'm wondering, when are you going to look at the overcrowding at Cumberland L? I was surprised that the grate hadn't been moved across the street after the Christmas break, so I'm just wondering when the board's going to take a look at that situation.
The report from management will be coming to the board on January the 27th at our next board meeting. There will be some options there for us to consider. I see a hand back there. Park?
I just have a couple of comments. I wanted to say that to hear the board publicly acknowledge the emotional turmoil of last year and even before that is very affirming, in particular for staff, support staff, and teachers, principals, vice principals in the district that have been living it then and now. And to hear your recognition of the issues, or I believe you call them the warts, that are out there. And we know about warts. Some people just leave warts. They don't really go away, but they sometimes, they get a little better. But obviously being more proactive and trying to look at some of the issues that are out there. I'd really like to urge the board members to go to the source of those warts. Go to those buildings, go to those portables, talk to the teachers, talk to the support staff, principals, vice principals. Find out where those rubs are and see, if there are some short-term solutions. I hear a lot about the short-term and the long-term, and to hear that you're acknowledging there are issues out there. It'd just be really great to see you out there talking to the people that are living the warts, and see if there are some solutions.
Thanks. Tom,
just on that, wanted just to confirm for the board that our first education committee meeting will be at Cumberland Elementary on the 10th of February. So it follows the board meeting, but it's very much to that point that and I've asked my trustee colleagues around identifying schools that we wanted for the balance of this school year to visit in very much that fashion.
So I'd just like to do a little bit of a clarification with regards to the education committee. It's not our intent to go there and have them present the school growth plan to us. We have a great way to hear all about that. So we're looking for warts and highlights too of things that go on at the schools that we visit on these visits. I'd also like to say that we've tried to design a process with our committee structure and so forth that will help promote dialogue. But I have to say that we'll do our best. But the responsibility, I think, should be shared with the public. I know not everybody has got a big mouth like I do and takes an opportunity to tell people what they think, whether they want to hear it or not. Some people just got tapped on the shoulders because maybe they're like that too. But I think that if what we've designed isn't working for you and you don't think we're asking you, please find a way to tell us what you think. We have our emails on the website. You can call us. Please take that opportunity. Danny, did you have something?
Yeah, I believe Alan Douglas was going to be setting up some road trips for us towards the majority of the schools in the district, so as a group. So.
The chair and myself have talked about zeroing in on the very first one, and we just have to select the date.
Date, sort of the north zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Sandwiches.
Okay. Jamie?
Just a couple of short ones, really. Even though I answered like you two.
I know.
I just want to make a comment about, Danny, you mentioned the possible middle school option of 8 to 10 and 11 to 12. And I'm sure you all know that in Victoria, when they reconfigured their 3 years to the middle school, they actually made the middle school grade 6, 7, 8 to go away from the 11, 12 model because they felt with the Dogwood projects and Dogwood graduation rates that by making it an earlier middle school, it allowed the hook in the later grades, 9, 10, 11, 12, to give the kids the hook to stay in school. They were finding that the kids were leaving between grade 10 and 11 because they didn't have a hook to high school. We probably already knew that, so that's what it is. The other question I wanted to throw in was just about the Band 7 instrument inventory. Janice, you had mentioned there's possible shortage of instruments, but basically the kid numbers have stayed, and we should have instruments for those kids. So I would just encourage, with the discussions with Charlotte Harvey, that possibly she might be able to bring an inventory of instruments somehow from the community. So that might be part of the budget process, so you would know how that might fit in.
My understanding is that those instruments are in use in the grade 8 to 12 schools and the 8 to 10 schools.
All of the materials in the middle schools were redistributed to the secondary schools, and in some cases, some of the science equipment to the elementary schools for our science kids in grade 7. So all of that is currently in our school community.
Sure, but the kid numbers are the same. So the grade 7s that would have been in band this year would technically have had some sort of instrument, who had to rent as they were going. I know from myself, and I say this too loud, I'll get in trouble, but we have the luxury of having one instrument at home and one at school, because my daughter plays a harmonium, and that's huge at school. So, but that's a luxury, so therefore there is that extra in the community, so I would expect that ours is not the exception to the rule when it comes to that sort of thing, so perhaps something to look at as far as industry. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thanks very much for
To adjourn.
second time. Thank you.
And it's all 9 o'clock.
Yeah, bye.